Hey everybody, welcome back. This is DJ, and I figured I'm going to do a little tutorial here about some editing in DaVinci Resolve. So it's going to be pretty quick. I don't know how long this is going to take, so we'll just see. I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff here. So let's go into Resolve, and you can see here I have the new file here for LuxCore for Smoke, a tutorial that I'm working on. You might see this come out before this is done or after, I'm not really sure. So here is basically just the starting point, okay? And how I do things is I will go into where I saved my export for my screen recording, which is what I'm doing right now. And you can see here I have some different screen recordings here. So I am doing the LuxCore Fire and Smoke, and you can see here I have this little, I think it's an FLV file. Let's see here. Yeah, MKV. So this MKV is just a file that gets spit out from OBS, and depending on what you're using, the codec may or may not work. If we go here and we just click and drag it into the file, you can see that it loads it up right there in the timeline. Okay, and it says change the project frame rate, which actually I'm not going to change it, and I'm just going to go up here and go to the project manager. Actually, not the project manager. I'm going to go to the project settings. And you can see here the playback rate is set to 24. And if you check here, it says timeline is 24 and all of that. So if I play this back, hey everybody, welcome back to DJ Tutorials. And
You guys
today
can
we are going
hear.
to be, you can hear, and I'm just going to turn down the desktop audio a little bit, and I'm just going to play this. And you can see here that I have the uh, basically the timeline's just running here, and you can see the audio on the bottom of this. And if we just kind of, you can see right here, I'm on the cut, and I'm sorry about the. I'll turn off the keyboard and the mouse if I need to, but next to that one is the media button. And you can see there's the media that I have, but really I don't need to be there. If I go into cut, you can see that this is basically, if I left click and drag here, I can drag this around, and there are tools you can use. So just like anything else, there's like tools and stuff and all that. But really, what you need to do is learn some of the hotkeys. And I'll just kind of show you what I do. So this beginning part right here, where you can see there's no audio, I usually just left click and drag, and it will edit that clip off. And if you left click and drag to the left there, you can see that it kind of hides and shows that section. So it's kind of like editing it without you having to do a bunch of button presses. So you could just left click and drag that. And so now it just starts right away, right there with me yelling at everybody. And you can kind of just like, scrub around, like I said, with left click and dragging here. You can also take this timeline right here and left click and drag this, which is a little bit faster than doing it here. And what's really neat is the way that you can just sort of edit these things rather quickly, and how I always do things. And I'm not saying that I'm the best editor ever, but how I like to do things is I'll find a section that has like a bunch of blank space where I'm not really doing anything. And if you know me, I do have a little bit of a throat condition where sometimes I clear my throat. And so I look for little things like this, and I'll edit these little bits out. So if I play this, it looks like that's just me talking. But I'll look for these like sort of blank sections, and I will hit Control B, which will basically split that section. So there's a left section and a right section here, and I can left click and drag these areas to edit that section. It looks like there's a little bit of an issue with this not loading up properly, but you get the idea. So after I did that edit, I just popped over from cut over to edit, and you can see here that I actually have these two sections right here. So even though in the cut section you can see that, basically there's just this, one line, and here's where the cut is. If I go into the edit, this is where I would have multiple layers where I can do all kinds of stuff. But I do most of my editing right here in this cut section because it is so easy to do things. And if I just kind of scrub around here, you can see that there's this big area that just has some like, blank space where I'm probably just, testing something out before I actually, show doing it. And if I hit Control B here, let's just say, and I scroll to another section and I put Control B again, and the way I remember that is just like blade, like a razor. But if you left click and drag and you move this around, you can see that there's this section right here. And if you look up here, can actually select these different clips in the timeline that's at the top. And this one that's right here, if you hit backspace or delete, it will actually uh, remove all of those in that clip. It will just kind of like put everything together, so you don't have to worry about a blank space being there or any like black frames in between or anything like that, because your clips aren't butted up against each other. In fact, in this view, you can't just take the cut or your particular section here, you can't just take that clip and left click and drag it out. You can't do that. Okay. So it's really good at, editing your footage down, getting it to where you need it to be, and removing all the extraneous stuff like that. And I'm not going to keep this as my final edit or anything. I'm just kind of showing you guys some of the things that I do. So let's go to a section that looks very different. So let's just say, for example, there's an area in which I'm like, hey, I'm going to edit this section out right here. Like all of this is going to be edited out for some reason. So I delete that, right? But now I have, this transition is pretty abrupt. I have, this going on here, and then all of a sudden there's this going on. And you'll notice that sometimes in my videos, I'll maybe edit something out, or I'll like take one section and move it to earlier in the timeline or something like that. And basically all I'm doing is I'm just trying to like make sure that everything runs properly, as far as like, cognitively making sure everybody can understand what I'm talking about, because sometimes I like either talk too much about something or not enough about something, and I have to go back and like put something in there. So these little transition spaces right here, what you can do is you can go over to the edit view and you find where that transition is. So it's right here. I have, this transition. I can select that and then right click, and then I can add a cross dissolve like this. So you can see here, if I play that, it does a dissolve. Now it does do the audio and the video, which, most of the time I will actually put this dissolve or this transition into a space that doesn't have audio, or I'll just pull the audio completely out of that section. I'm not going to show how to do that right here, but just for a quick, edit lesson, if I if you click on that clip where at the end or at the beginning it has this transition, you can click up here in the inspector up here. You can click on the transition. You can actually change these. So you can use all of these presets, which are actually pretty cool. I really like the triangle left, and it's a really nice effect. And I use it at the beginning of my videos. So you can see there's a sort of like diagonal thing there where it's cutting across. And you can feather it and change the border. You can either feather it or you can have a solid line. So if you want to change this to a color or something like that, you could do that. And or you can just do a feather effect like this. And then that's the transition effect, just like that. So it's pretty nice. You can change the easing and stuff like that as well, and you can also change how the audio works and everything else. So it's pretty great. I really do enjoy doing editing in here versus Premiere, because in Resolve it feels a lot more intuitive. Now the other thing that you'll want to do, and I'm just holding Alt here and I'm using the middle mouse wheel to scroll out so I can see more of the timeline. What I always will do is, if after I get my clip, like the edit of my video, like perfect, and I'm done with it, I'll take all of it and I'll right click, and I will do right here where it says new compound clip. If you do that, you can name this. So I can call this, like final, edit or whatever, and create. And what that does is it basically creates this big, file here, or this big clip. So it really is all those edits are still there, and you could go back in and edit this compound clip. But what this does is it allows it a lot easier if you have a bunch of other edits that you're putting together and you have segments that you've created. So let's say you have like, you know, a 3-minute interview segment, and then it's interspersed with, I don't know, if you have an ad or something that needs to go in between, and then you have more of that segment or something like that, you could create a bunch of compound clips and call it like, interview 1, interview 2, interview 3, or something like that, and you can then edit those together in a really easy way. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I can, if I hit Control B here, see I can take this clip and move it around. See that? And it does create this space. And what happens sometimes is, let's say if you're editing in here and I go to this frame and I hit delete, you can see that it just fused those together. Okay, I'm going to hit Control Z there to undo. If I hit backspace though, it will create a blank gap a space in between here where there will be no video. So that can be a little bit frustrating because when you're, I'm just going to Control Z here to go back to this. You can see here that if I have, let's say I add a title, okay? So if I go over to the titles over here in the toolbox and I add a title, and let's just make this longer just to make it easier to see. So here's my title, right? And I go up here to where the text is put in, and I call this, example, for example. And I call this even more example. If I take this and I hit delete, if there are clips that are underneath here, so let's actually, I want to show you how this works. So let's cut this and cut this like this here. Okay. If I go like this and I hit delete, see how it just deleted a whole bunch of that? So you got to be really careful, and when you want to delete something without changing anything else, you need to make sure you hit that backspace. And that is another reason why I like to use the cut section to do my editing and not edit in here. So one thing that a lot of YouTubers or people who are trying to create these either simple videos or more complex videos, you might want to reuse stuff. And you might find it a little bit frustrating because you're like, okay, I know that I have a bunch of title cards and I have a bunch of, effects or something like that, or, video clips that I want to reuse for everything, like an intro or an outro or whatever it might be. You might find it a little frustrating, but all you really need to do is go up here to File, go to Project Manager, which will pull open this right here. So you can see that I have all of these files, right? And you can right click and you can see where it says right here, dynamic project switching. So open that up like this. And you can see here I have, all of my different titles and my text and all of the stuff like this. So let's say I just wanted to reuse all of this right here, which is often what I'll do. I'll reuse the intro title, and then I'll reuse the background that I created, which is this stuff that's behind the text right here. And I'll reuse this text so that, and then just change the text in the next video that I do. I can just highlight these, Control C to copy, okay? And then up here, you can see that there's two different things. There's LuxCore for smoke, and then there's this one right here. So you can select this, or you can go to a project. You can go to the project manager again and select it from there, but it's easier to go between the two like this. And from here, I can then paste, but you have to be a little bit careful because if they are on the same line, so if I pasted it and something was on this first line, it might overwrite it or something like that. So I'm going to Control Z. What I often will do is I'll put it at the end. So I'll paste it over here with Control V, and then I'll just slide that along and put that where it needs to be. So that's just a precaution I take. If you get really, really fast and good at this, then you might not need to do that. I'm just letting you know that that's generally how I like to do that kind of thing. So one thing to keep in mind is that you can very easily get a little bit confused when you start to add some keyframes to stuff, and I'll show you an example. So if I add some keyframes, and this confused me at first, all of a sudden I started seeing this, and it's because I accidentally selected this right here, which is like a Bezier handle for animations and stuff. So if you start to see this kind of weird stuff going on, all it is that you accidentally clicked on one of these things, okay? So just keep that in mind. So I know that was really, really fast, but I really just wanted to show you guys some really quick tips on how to do some editing inside of DaVinci Resolve, and just a few pointers on, if you're just beginning and just learning how to do this, just some things that might help you out. So thanks very much. Thanks to all of the patrons for your donations. It's very much appreciated, and I will see you all next time on DJ Tutorials.